Welcome to New Mexico Restaurants Now, where you get the inside scoop on the food scene across New Mexico. This episode is sponsored by the Hand Solution, providing high-quality hand sanitizer at a competitive price. Stay tuned to the end to hear about their special offer. I'm Carol White, CEO of the New Mexico Restaurant Association, and our guest today is Matt DiGregory, the owner of the Range Café in Albuquerque and Bernalillo. Matt is the winner of the Restaurateur of the Year award, the highest honor given annually to a restaurant owner who exemplifies excellence in customer service, employee relations, innovation, and has a true passion for the restaurant industry. Congratulations, Matt, and welcome to New Mexico Restaurants Now.
Thank you very much.
Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that our sponsor has generously donated a $250 restaurant kit of Hand Solution, hand sanitizer for you and your restaurant.
Excellent.
Yeah, can't get too much of that right now.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. So Matt, I love your restaurants. I've been going to them, since I moved back to Albuquerque 18 years ago. How long have they been around?
28 years.
28 years.
Yeah.
That's wild. So talk to me. What was the inspiration for your restaurants?
You know, it's interesting. I fell into the restaurant business by accident. And, I went to film school. I was living in Los Angeles, and there really wasn't a way for me to survive Los Angeles. And my brother lived in Placitas, New Mexico, and he was opening up a fine dining restaurant called the Prairie Star. So the lease was running out on my house. I knew if I moved to New Mexico, I could at least get a job. So I went to work in his restaurant and realized that I really loved it. And one day the pastry chef went on vacation. They didn't have anyone to fill in, so I filled in, not really knowing anything. Took a bunch of recipes from my mom and my sister-in-law and filled in. 2 weeks later, they fired the pastry chef and hired me to be the pastry chef. So I became a self-taught pastry chef. And after 6 years of working for him, I realized that, I really, really like this. And there was a restaurant in Manhattan Beach, California, where I used to live called The Local Yoke. And I loved it. I used to eat there every other week, or literally like every other day. And they just had a great breakfast menu, a great lunch menu. So I'd been eating at this little place called Abuelita's in Bernalillo when I'd go to work. And I kept looking at the building going, God, this is a really cool building. This would make a great restaurant. It needs a local yoke. At the time, there was only a couple of new Mexican restaurants there and a couple of fast food restaurants. And I knew that Placitas was growing. Bernalillo was a cool spot. So decided to take the plunge. And one day I was on my way to work and I decided to stop in to get gas, which happened to be across the street from Abuelita's. And I said, I'm going to go in and ask the owner this weekend what's happening with the restaurant because I heard she was moving. And as I turned to go in to pay for my gas, there was a sign on the door that said, Abuelita's restaurant for rent, see Frank inside. So I literally grabbed the sign, walked into Frank and said, Frank, how much? He said, $500 a month. I said, I'll take it. Mm-hmm. And I literally knew nothing about what I was going to do other than I'd been thinking about it a while. I knew nowhere that I was going to get money from. And I walked into the restaurant that day to go to work, and I'm talking to my friend Catherine, and I said, I'm going to open my own restaurant. And I said, the only problem is I don't have any money. And Tom Fenton, who was the line cook, standing over my shoulder, said, I can get some money. And I said, well, do you want to go into business together? And a month later, we opened up the Range Cafe, and that's how we started.
That's fun. I mean, it's kind of, every entrepreneur's story in the restaurant industry. You get into it, you decide you really like it, and then, you go out on your own. And I have always loved the Range Cafe in Bernalillo. I took my daughters there when they were very young, and I think that's where they learned how to eat red chili, honestly. So tell me, your inspiration was the yoke, and of course you've New Mexicoized your menu as much as you probably need to.
Yeah.
And tell us about what's your favorite dish on your menu?
Well, I think being from Indiana originally, there was a dish that when I moved to California, I was blown away that you couldn't get in California, and that was a breaded tenderloin sandwich. In Indiana, every single restaurant has a breaded tenderloin, and I came out to Los Angeles and I was blown away that you couldn't go to the freezer section and get a Pete's Pride breaded tenderloin sandwich. So that was always on my mind. I knew we had to have that when we opened up the range, and that's always been a favorite of mine. Although currently it's not on the menu, but it will make its way back again someday. The range kind of came about because Tom and I were working at Prairie Star, and we had worked at Scalo together. Mm-hmm. At that time, Scalo was the premier restaurant in Albuquerque. It was the place to see and be seen. And we just sort of took fine dining and scaled it down to this funky 56-seat cafe in Bernalillo, New Mexico. And it was an instant hit. And I'll never forget the first day when we ran out of food because we were so busy and we couldn't open up for dinner. But there was one customer in particular that we serve him his sandwich with a salad on it. He pulls out a piece of red oak leaf lettuce and goes, "This lettuce is bad." They didn't know what they were looking at, because they were used to iceberg lettuce. And here we were in this very funky small town, very cool small town in New Mexico. And we were serving that level of food, for what amounted to a fraction of what you would have paid for it at the Prairie Star. So, that was kind of what put us on the map and what made us popular right away.
Well, and I've traveled with you a little bit just as a board member of the Restaurant Association. We've gone on some trips, and I always love that wherever you go, you are looking at restaurants and seeing if things would work in your restaurant. I mean, the innovation is amazing for what you've done in this restaurant. And I got to say, the funkiness of the Bernalillo location is very fun. And I think you guys have lines out the door every single weekend, at least, if not weekday too. The food is fabulous. And you always keep that consistency and that really, I don't know, upscale thing going on. And I appreciate that, being a foodie myself and from the industry. You execute well across all of your restaurants as well. So I know that if I go into a Range Cafe on Wyoming, I'm going to get the same food that I get in Bernalillo. So talk about that a little bit. How do you do that with the folks that you hire?
Well, that's probably the number one most difficult thing that we run as a restaurateur that owns multiple locations. It's something that you have to really, really work at, and you have to work at it some more and work at it some more, because the minute you turn your back, you'll hire a new employee, and then all of a sudden you'll find out that, their way of making chili is different than the way your way of making chili is. So you have to go back and readjust. It's a constant battle, and it's something that probably is the number one issue that we face as a multiple unit restaurant operator, to make consistency so that you do get that experience. And, it's a little bit tough because our staff in Bernalillo has been there for 20 plus years. I mean, we have people that have been with us since day one, and they don't change. And so they could do it in their sleep. And you go to one of our newer locations, and that person's been there for 3 months. And it's a challenge because you don't always get the exact same thing as much as we try. It can always be different.
Well, I'm going to say you do a fabulous job
Thanks.
at that. And for somebody who's never been to your restaurant, can you kind of explain the decor, the atmosphere?
Well, the atmosphere started again. Our original location was a little old, funky. It used to be a gas station that was built in the 20s in Bernalillo, New Mexico, which in itself is a unique little place. But the community, there's a lot of art and a lot of artists. And when we very first opened our doors, we didn't really have enough money. I think we started the restaurant for $17,000. And we didn't have anything to put on the walls aside for a few things that my mother had picked up. And an artist walked in. She said, "I'm an artist. I'd love to hang my art here." And we said, "That'd be great." So we filled the walls with her art. And all of a sudden we started selling some of it, and more people started getting in tune with that. And one artist in particular, a man named Roger Evans, who's this very eccentric, unique individual. He's now 87 years old and still does artwork for us. He makes these 3D sculptures of cows and, Volkswagen bus driving through a wall and just all kinds of really unique oddball sort of artwork. Roger's been featured on the HGTV show Extreme Homes because his house is very unique. It looks like a mushroom. It's the weirdest thing. He's an old, you'd say he was an old hippie, even though he's not. But he just has this wild imagination, and we just say, Roger, whatever you want to do, here's your space up on the wall, fill it in. And if you go to some of our newer locations, one of them, he's got a 70-foot long mural with a stove chasing a cow with this big giant tongue sticking out, and a drunk cowboy and cows flying across the ceiling. And another location, we've got a box car with cows flying out of it, and they're chasing me. It's just very whimsical. And, some people have said, your restaurant has sort of a kid's imagination. Well, it's all coming out of this 85-year-old, 87-year-old guy. And he's the one that's made all this stuff. And when you see it, it's really impressive to see what this guy's pulled off. So there's a lot of that. We have a lot of artists that we just say, hey, here's your space, do something. We have Laura Robbins, who's done a bunch of mosaics at several of our locations. That started out where she was taking old plates that had broken, and she made some mosaics out of it. And that's spawned into various of our locations where she's done really cool artwork. Another one is Ben Forgy. He's the guy that makes all of our furniture. Ben started out, he moved to town. He was living in Algodones, New Mexico, and he was coming into the restaurant, and he said, I'm a furniture maker. I'd love to make some tables and chairs, because we had these old chairs from Furr's Cafeteria that were on wheels, and we had hardwood floors, and you could tell if people had been drinking too much when they'd start sliding away from the table. So Ben made a chair for us, and we really liked it, and he ended up making all of our chairs. And the day that he showed us the tables that he was going to make, I got into the conversation with him and said, he was complaining about, my business of art is starting to take off, and I know nothing about running a business. And I said, well, if our place burns down tomorrow, I'll go into business with you and run your business. Well, we actually burnt down that night.
No.
So,
my gosh.
it was kind of bizarre that I said that, and that was a whole weird scenario. But Ben has stuck with us ever since, and now he lives in Michigan, and when we do a new project, he still makes tables and chairs and art, and he's done some really unique pieces for us that are signature to the restaurant.
Well, and then you have all of your antique ranges. So because it's the Range Cafe, there's ranges everywhere. And are they easy bake ovens, or
they're we have over probably 150 toy stoves, and they're anything from easy bake ovens to these things that kids played with in the 20s and 30s that have, 1,500 watts of power and could actually really cook something. It's amazing more houses didn't get burnt to the ground. But in addition to that, we have life-size stoves as well. Say that 3 times fast. So it's kind of funny that today I get a call probably at least once a month. Hey, I've got this stove that would be perfect in one of your restaurants. And, we've gotten to the point where we have to turn people down. That's kind of unfortunate because a lot of them are really cool. We just don't have places to put them anymore. Very cool. Well, and it is that fun, funky atmosphere. And then tell us a little bit more about the food. I go there. I don't always have the huevos rancheros. I love your salads. You guys do fabulous salads, and I really appreciate that you take the time to figure out a great dressing and a great salad that all goes together. Because so many restaurants, it seems like they call in their salads and phone it in. So talk to us about the rest of your menu. I think that you had mentioned earlier travel, and travel is something that I love to do, and I love to go to big metropolitan cities and see what the food scene is going on there. And quite frankly, we copy a lot of stuff, or we copy ideas, and we copy concepts, and we copy things that we see. So quite often I'll see a dish that I like an element of it, and I'll bring it back and incorporate it to something that we have at the Range. And Salads are definitely part of that. We've always tried to make all of our dressings from scratch. Ranch dressing was one of those ones that we didn't until almost a year ago. We always used kind of the, Hidden Valley Ranch sort of thing. And then we hired an executive chef who had this killer ranch recipe. So now we even make that from scratch. And I just think it's really important to control what you're putting in your food. And I'm a big proponent for good old natural food, not using prepackaged processed food. It's super easy to just buy a salad dressing that gets delivered through our food purveyor, but it just tastes so much better if it's homemade and made from scratch and made with love, and what's in it, and there's no chemicals and there's no flavor enhancements and things like that. And that's something that's always been really, really important to me, that we've tried to hold on to at the Range and not cut corners. Our baked goods, we use real butter, real cream, real fruits, real chocolate, the whole 9 yards. And that's something that I'll maintain till we're no longer in business.
Fabulous. Well, I appreciate that. And because one of your stores is very close to my office, I end up going there at least once a week. This has been a challenging year, and you and I have been in touch for most of it. And I know one of your biggest challenges has been the fact that you've had to lay off your employees.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about your employees and how you've seen them and how are they doing now?
Well, we pre-COVID we had 550 employees in 9 locations, and we're down to 6 locations and about 50 employees right now. So, we're only able to serve to go. And that's probably the worst thing that I've had to do, is to, call people up and say, we can't use you right now. That's the toughest thing. People ask, you get excited about, how many millions of dollars in sales that you have. And, we started out as nothing. And, at our height, we did $24 million in sales. And, how much money we make and how much money we bring in means nothing compared to the better number of, I employed 550 people. That's the toughest thing, is to lay somebody off, especially under a situation that you have very little control of. And I can't wait to bring them back, and I can't wait to get on the road again and be cooking and making people happy.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. This whole thing, we get a vaccine and it's gone. What keeps you motivated?
Well, it's been extremely difficult to be motivated under this, because you're dealing with a moving target and you feel like a punching bag, and every day you walk in and there's not much you can do. Really, it's you got to figure out a way to be relevant, and a lot of it is no one really knows what's going to happen to the restaurant business coming out of COVID. Is it going to be completely different? Are people still going to come into your buildings? Will we still need a 5,000 square foot footprint of a restaurant? There's so many unknowns, and here I thought I was within a few years of retirement. Now it's almost like I'm starting over again. The motivation is to continue the legacy and continue and hope that someone within my company is there to carry it on and keep on going. So that's what motivates me.
So where do you go from here?
Well, we have to figure out how to survive. We've stripped to the bare core, and I think once that we figure out COVID and we figure out how to come back, we figure out how to operate safely, I think that we'll be lucky if we do survive. That will be one of the few, and therefore we should be okay. And that will be popular again, and people will remember us as someone who was there for them under the time of need, and that'll pay off in spades. And I hope that we're back to reopening new locations and new concepts again, and being creative and all of that. The creativity part of this business is what motivates me the most, and putting a smile on people's face, and I can't wait for that to happen again.
So, I know you have other concepts that are out there, and you kind of thrive on that.
Yeah.
Although there's the Range, you had Standard Diner, the Freight House, and there's one up in Vegas.
Well, the one in Las Vegas, New Mexico, not the fun one, the cool one.
Yeah, the cool.
You always have to say that. There's always the story of the lady getting off at the train stop in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and going, "Where's the strip?" But that was a Range Cafe. That would have been a really cool project if it would have stayed, because what's happening in Las Vegas, New Mexico is really neat. The old hotel, the Castaneda, has been redone up there. They have a fabulous chef at the restaurant. It's an old Fred Harvey house hotel, and it's really cool what's happening up in Vegas. So it's sad that we couldn't stick out through COVID for that. But I've had a few other concepts. We had an Italian restaurant for a while, and I'm sad that those didn't work. But the Range is the rock, and we've decided to focus on the Range. I don't know if there's another concept coming. It may be a version of it. I don't know. We have a space next to our Range where Standard Diner used to be that could become a coffee shop and a bar. So there's that. That's what keeps me motivated. We've got some space that we need to do something with, and I can't wait for that to happen.
Very fun. Well, and I would just say, I think you've done the right thing by sticking with one concept.
Yeah.
A little bit easier. In my restaurant days, I had 3 different concepts, everything from a Japanese restaurant to a tapas restaurant and brewery. So sometimes it's just got to be easier just to stick with one concept and have it figured out enough that you can feel confident, going into different spaces. Matt, I really appreciate this, and I know this has been a difficult year, but I do want to congratulate you again. I'm so happy that this award went to you this year. I know of nobody who deserves it more.
Thank you.
And congratulations being Restaurateur of the Year.
I appreciate it very much. It was unexpected.
Well, I'm so happy it was you. I want to thank our sponsor, The Hand Solution, who provides high-quality hand sanitizer and disinfectant at a competitive price. Order your NMRA restaurant kit today at thehandsolution.com/NMRA. The first 20 orders will be entered into a drawing for a free hand sanitizer for a year. Thanks for tuning in to New Mexico Restaurants Now. You can watch this and other episodes on the New Mexico Restaurants Now YouTube channel, and you can subscribe to the audio podcast at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and thanks to The Hand Solution again for sponsoring this episode.